All right. So today we are going to look at module 4.2, which means the fourth module, second half. It's been some time we've spoken. I think last Sunday something happened. We had to cancel the class. So let's look at what we had covered last time. We had spoken about continuous learning. We had spoken about strategy of continuous learning. We have also spoken about the culture. We had a brief glimpse of all the technology trends to choose from, and we also spoke about creating continuous learning journey through technology. Now, what will be covered today is the latest concepts available. We are going to go back to that because that's one of the very integral and important parts of our life now, especially after COVID. And then we can talk briefly about chatbot. We do not expect you to remember all of this, but like I said, there are some sections of this course that we are giving you as empowering tools to have an intelligent conversation. The tools change so dynamically and so fast that it is not advisable to try and even document that. And that is why all the nitty-gritties have not been documented. But the basic concept is something that you should be completely comfortable with. And once you have, it's like giving you a taster, and as the technology evolves over years, obviously we'll update our course material, but I always say this that this is one course where the content can change in like days. And that's why we will talk about chatbot, we'll talk about gamification, but we will talk about the fundamentals. So not like talk about the details. And I do not expect you to remember all the nitty-gritties of it. I expect you to remember the concept, the structure, the definition, so that when changes happen, you are able to relate to it, understand it, and evolve. Okay. Then we are going to talk about impact of technology advancements on continuous learning. We are also going to talk about enabling continuous learning, which is putting all the elements together and tying the bow on the word called e-learning. Now, the problem is that everybody uses multiple languages to replaceable as e-learning. Not everything is e-learning. So we'll understand the subtle differences. We will talk the other e-learning elements that are really, really way better and gives competition to the classroom training. And then we obviously have the recommended self-assessment questionnaire and additional reading material. Before I jump into this, any questions from our last session? Does anybody have any doubts? I know there are two people who tried to reach out to me for assessments, but then I was in Switzerland, so I didn't see their messages. I've seen them now, so I'm going to try and talk to them today. But other than that, is there anything else that we can talk about? Any questions, queries, doubts you have? Any of you? We're a small group of people. We can talk in detail if you would like.
Ma'am Margaret here. I'm not sure if you have covered this topic because I couldn't attend the last class, and unfortunately, the recording is not yet shared with us. So,
Oh,
there is something called as augmented reality that I saw in
no, we
textbook.
haven't. No, we
Okay,
haven't covered.
great. So
So
we'll cover
AR,
it.
VR is going to be covered today, is what,
Oh,
let me see. Damn, we will destroy the secret. Yeah. Augmented reality versus virtual reality we will cover today. Yeah. And again, like I said, in the textbook, there's a lot of material, and I'm glad you're following it because if you follow it, you will have no problems because you'll be able to see that whatever is in the textbook, 10% is on the slides for conversation and understanding. That is for you to read and understand. Yeah.
right.
Any other questions, anybody? आज अपनी शक्ल दिखा दो यार तुम लोग एकदम ऐसे ढक के बैठे हो हमारे यहाँ पे देखो -1 है आज and this one is sitting with the jacket on with camera on. Come on, show me your faces. How cold is it, Margaret?
It's not cold at all, ma'am. Actually, I'm in Mumbai, and it's
Oh,
supposed to
Mumbai is
be
never cold.
winter, and
Mumbai
it's
is
not.
never cold. Mumbai is never cold.
Never
Mumbai
cold.
is warm, hot, very
Yes,
rainy, very moist, very
right.
humid, and then again warm. It's never cold.
Correct. 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 But back at my native place, which is Meghalaya, it started to become
Oh,
cold.
yes. Yeah,
It's
Meghalaya is
cold.
cold. Meghalaya is
Yeah.
like really proper cold. No
Yes.
deadlights here today?
Sorry.
Mahesh, I am asking no deadlights. Prasad, Mahesh, Pradeep. How is it? How cold is it? Prasad has decided to show his face to me.
It's not cold at all here.
Actually, I'm in Hyderabad, so here is a low
Again,
cold.
hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not hot.
Hyderabad is
It is
hot, very hot,
yeah,
and pleasant, and then very hot, and then very, very hot.
yeah. Actually, in Hyderabad, when you
Yeah,
are inside your room, so
yeah.
yes, there is no change in environment actually.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah,
I've stayed and worked in Hyderabad. Do you know about the Uppal facility,
yeah,
Genpact
man.
Uppal
Yeah,
facility? So I used to be there all the time. There's a learning facility, right? I used to work out of that building for a long time, 2 years. So Hyderabad, I know. You have to live in Hyderabad, you'd have to have air conditioning.
yeah, true.
So okay, so I know people from Delhi here, it looks like, because people are telling me, some of my friends have messaged you, oh, what do we are? And I go, okay, tell me temperatures. Okay, then this is my temperature. Now tell me. Who's feeling cold now? Okay. So, this is one of the things that we will do now is try and have an open mind. Okay. It can get a little heavy. Many of you, those of you are engineers, etc., it's going to be easy for you. Others might think, do we remember all of this? No, you don't have to remember all of this. This is just trying to make sure that you understand. Okay. So this picture might overwhelm some of you. Let me try and make it very simple. So we are now going to talk about, so I showed you the technology trends the other day. Now we're going to talk about how it all ties in together, which means that we are going to talk about words which are very commonly used nowadays is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Many of you are already aware of what it is, very, very aware. But then there are some people like me who was not that aware initially, and I worked and studied to understand what really it is. So I'm trying to make it very simple, very English oriented for all of you to understand. So, like I said, keep an open mind. This graphic is not there in the book, I believe. I've tried to pull it out to make sure that we're able to understand it in the class. Left-hand side, the graphic talks about what artificial intelligence really is. Contrary to popular belief, artificial intelligence is not just one thing. There are multiple things that create this world of artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence has two subsets, machine learning and deep learning. In machine learning, those are the artificial intelligence techniques which use various kind of statistical methods to enable machines to improve experience. And then deep learning is a subset of machine learning, which makes computation of multi-layered neural networks feasible. So neural networks, we'll talk about it. It's again an advanced concept. I've tried to show in a picture various kind. What is a neural network? There is an input layer, there's a hidden layer, there's an output layer. So before I come to the explanation of all these three terms, let's first begin with the left-hand side, which is the artificial intelligence graphic. So, what are we trying to show here? We are trying to show the various techniques which enables computers to mimic human behavior. There is language processing that requires to happen. There are various kind of expert system that processes the inputs that are received by the machine. Then there is planning and optimization that has to happen for the output to be delivered. And then there is the robotics bit in terms of integrating the intelligence, knowledge into technology. And from more of execution perspective, you need to understand machine learning learns through predictive analysis and deep learning. What is predictive analysis? Predicting. If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. Those are the stimuli that we teach a machine. How many of you remember the example in your schools? And I don't know whether it's even in school textbooks nowadays. Do you remember the flowchart example we used to learn in school where we used to see learn how do you write an algorithm for a robot to make tea. Do you still have that in your textbooks? Does anybody remember that? You don't? Okay. So when we learned for the first time, oh my God, I'm growing old. When we learned what is a flowchart, what is algorithms, the first example that used to be given in the NCERT book used to be, how do you tell a robot to make a cup of tea? And that was the introduction of writing algorithms and converting that algorithm into a flow chart. And our teacher used to teach us the yes no command. How does the yes no come in? So let me become that teacher in the school. So if you have to teach a robot how to make tea, the robot has no idea. It doesn't understand the word kitchen. It doesn't understand the word utensil. It doesn't understand the word tap. It doesn't understand the word water. So first we need to enable that we establish language so that the language processing software does. Now, the robot cannot learn thousands and millions. It can, but then to begin with, if you're trying to communicate, it takes a robot to evolve to be able to get access to thousands and millions and billions of words that we use. And not all of them have not all of them have specific meanings. There are a lot of subtle words that mean similar but not the same. And that is confusing the robot. So when we're doing language processing or we do machine learning, we have to make sure that the language that we use is understood by the robot, which is nothing but a machine. So in this example, when you are teaching a robot how to make tea, you have to give the lowest level instructions for the robot to understand. For example, let's just have some entertainment here. How will you make tea? First, you have to go to the kitchen. Yes, no, guys? So you have to switch on the light. So you have to check, is the light on or off? As basic as that. So the robot walks into the kitchen, key, and it checks whether the light is on or not. Now, the robot doesn't necessarily need light, but there can be things that can go very wrong in the kitchen. So let's make sure the first instruction is go to the kitchen. Is the light on? Flowchart. Yes, no. Decision point. Yes. Okay. Let's switch on the gas. Is the gas knob on? The cylinder, in case you're using a cylinder. So maybe next question can be, check the apparatus. Is it gas powered? Is it pipe gas powered? Or is it electricity powered? If it's an induction hob, then press the power button. In case it's a cylinder, check the knob. Is it on? Yes or no? If yes, it's okay. No, turn the knob on. Next, in case it's a tube gas, then turn the knob upwards to get the gas into the jetty so that you can, and now take the lighter. In case of a non-electric burner, switch on the lighter. You getting my point? I'm trying to break it down into lowest. That's how a robot thinks. That's how they understand. That's why they reaction, because they're processing, and that's getting more and more smoother nowadays. Our times, it used to be super funny to do this because robots almost didn't exist. It all existed in our textbooks. Yeah. And then you break it down, take a utensil, take a heavy panned utensil. How many cups of tea are you trying to make? 1, 2, 3. Okay. For every cup of tea, add this much of water. Allow the water to boil. Take a different utensil. Do you see the tea powder? Do you see it? You don't see it. If you don't see it, press help. If you do see it, take it down. Add. So basically, so it will be like the process, which is so easy for a human being, like done. Tea. It takes so many steps for a robot to operate safely and smoothly to get an output. So all these steps are written in machine learning language with words that the robot understands. There's predictive analysis, which is your decision gates that you're taking. Then there is vision recognition, image recognition, and then there is machine recognition. All of these are part of how the vision is managed for the robotics. Then there is text to speech and speech to text. Because if you are constructing a robot or you are giving written commands or whichever way you're communicating with the robot with, you have to make sure that the robot understands and responds appropriately and emulate human emotion. All of this happens through the neural network that's built inside the robot. Robot is just not a machine. It is you are allowing the robot to mimic human behavior. So we have nervous systems, robots have neural systems. which basically embeds the learning, and we call it deep learning, which allows the robot to get an input, process it, multiple layers, which are basically the response being created for the output. So there's the input layer and output layer, the multiple layers in between, neural networks, which process all the information that it had received for a legible, tangible, meaningful, not garbage output. So that is the artificial nervous system for the robotics, which we do so effortlessly, which is our brain, which is our brain. Those nervous system is managed by our brain. This is the artificial brain. There's the artificial brain, then there's the artificial language, which is the machine learning. So there's deep learning, there's machine learning, and then all of that ties beautifully together to mimic human behavior, and that becomes artificial intelligence. It's not just one thing, it's an amalgamation of all this process that brings an artificial intelligence system alive. Here I've used the word robot, but then actually any kind of intelligence system works like this. Does it make sense? Have I made it simple enough? Have I confused it? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. So having said that, I won't bore you more, but I just have to show you, before I jump into that, what I showed, like Margaret said it, I don't know how many of you have heard it, but then I'm going to make sure very crystal clear that we will not be going through every topic in as much detail as it there in the textbook, because most of you already know what virtual reality is, augmented reality is, in terms of experiencing it around you. You know that, but then you do not know the subtle differences. What we'll talk about is, again, education is our purpose here. Mugging up is not our purpose. Mugging up you can do from the book. The understanding bit is what we are going to do here in the classroom. And that's why we are now, and this segment is, some more information is available in the book. Feel free to read about it. But in short, this is what artificial intelligence is. And what we are going to explore are the various minions, or the forms of artificial intelligence that we see around us. So let's jump into the first one, which is the most commonly accessed by all of us: augmented reality, virtual reality. Now, what is the difference between both of them? I have put it out here, but how many of you can tell me what is the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality just by looking at the image? And I'm not taking over the text. You feel free to read the text. But is anybody aware of what the difference is between both the technologies?
Ma'am, in
What I
virtual reality,
understood, ma'am. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Pradeep, go ahead.
please go ahead, madam.
Okay, so what I understood, ma'am, is augmented reality has got to do more for images, from the images point of view. It's like you just see the image, but virtual, you literally get inside. Like, for example, recently I went, as in me and my husband, we went to see a property where we wanted to book a place, like, So
Yeah,
they've shown us this virtual
virtual
reality,
tour, virtual
right?
tour. Yeah.
Virtual tour. So you literally just put in that Google kind of thing, and you feel like you are in that
Walking,
property,
you're walking in it.
walking, and then you're moving around. So you feel like you're live in that particular place. So that's what virtual reality is you get the feeling that you're in there. Augmented, I think, is more just to see. So, but more in depth, I don't know about
Good
augmented.
idea. Good response. Pradeep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying the same things. In virtual reality, you feel that you are a part of that particular picture or that particular video itself. But in augmented, you can see pictures differently. It means you are not involved in that. But in virtual reality, you are in that particular uh, frame actually. You are fit in that frame. Yeah,
So
that
how
is the
many have
base.
seen those what is it? 7D movies, 5D movies. Have you guys seen those?
Yeah,
5D movies.
the quality of sounds, like it feel like the sounds is come from your behind sometimes. Sometimes you see sounds coming from upside.
Hmm.
Sometimes you feel what the bike is running in that picture. That is maybe it comes up
It's
to
coming
you.
towards you. Yeah, it's coming
Yeah,
towards you. Yeah.
feel
So
like.
you guys have a fair idea. Like I said, in our time when I tried to read this, I couldn't understand because it was not so easily available. You're absolutely correct. augmented reality is augmenting to make it more real for you. Like you do an onboarding journey in your office and they make you do like an avatar. So you're walking there and you can see on your screen. It can be mobile, can be your laptop, that you're walking through various sides of the building. The building opens up, you're able to see what's inside the building, but you are not in the building. Like Margaret said, you are not in it. You're able to move around it. So virtual tours, virtual journeys, etc., are becoming more and more popular. But virtual reality is taking to the next step. It's putting you in that situation for you to experience, which is amazing. Samsung gets those big goggles that you're talking about. You guys will laugh if you hear this. I've never worn one. I freak out if I have to wear that. It feels that I will lose all touch to what's happening in reality, because that is exactly what happens. Because you're so much into it. बाहर बम बच जाएगा तो बस सुनाई नहीं देगा. Building से नहीं भाग पाओगे. Because you are so much into that. And
True.
morally, psychologically, I think this really messes with your head, because this is the real world. And you're going and transporting yourself into a very different world, snapping back and forth. It just, maybe, like I said, I'm a little classical. So I find it very freakish.
You're right. It really messes with your head because especially when these people try to sell property, you may not be really convinced by just knowing the facilities that they have to give or what are the features and all of that. But when you use this virtual tour, you will be more likely to get convinced to buy that property.
Because it's all embellished. It's
Right.
also embellished. That's one of the things that I realized, especially when we was in both in Romania as well as here, because technology is used so much in favor of selling and embellishing things. They make it look way more beautiful than what it is. It is like Manish Malhotra Langa on a fantastic, slim, trim, beautiful model. And you buy the same thing from the shop and you come back home and you're like, oh my God, what is it? I look like a maid in this. Because it's been the color, the lighting, the everything is so perfect when they're trying to sell it. And even in the shop, it's like gold jewelry. When you go to the shop, it's looking so good. The lights are glittering, everything is so wonderful. And when you get it back home, it's very different. So, and this is like taking like multi-million steps ahead from that when you go into virtual reality and augmented reality. Deal with augmented reality. It is trying to give you some sense. But virtual reality, it messes with my head again. Interesting point of view. But it is something that many people are using for remote employees to give them a sense of what their facilities are. For example, we have facilities in Switzerland, we have facility in Italy, we have facilities in China, we have facilities in a couple of other countries. Now, everybody cannot, all the new joiners cannot fly to those locations. Neither can they have a lab tour, because lab tours require people to wear certain kind of protective gear. It requires certain kind of health conditions to be going to the labs where we do our experiments. But people still need to are curious, one, and second, they need to know because of their jobs as to what happens and how it happens in the buildings. So most of the time in learning and development space, virtual reality can be a blessing for people, can be super fun. And the learning can be like 50 times more sticky, because when you are walking through something, you are able to experience it in a better way. So you can see the reception as to how the office building's reception is, where the labs are, where the meeting rooms are, where your team sits, all of that in virtual reality. We also do it in augmented reality, but now I'm going to come to the main um, determining factor as to which one you would embrace. Then that is the big bucks. Virtual reality is extremely expensive. One, to afford, two, to design, and three, to customize. Okay. Afford because the initial startup is very expensive. You have to hire vendors to be able to create that for you. Then you have to hire the equipment, etc., etc. Number one. Number two, updating, customizing it, and updating it is a constant um, exercise, which means that you just cannot hire a team or group of people to say that, okay, come do it, leave, we will keep updating it by ourselves. It requires constant financial investment for you to keep it up to date. For augmented reality, yes, it is there, but it is not as complicated as it is in case of virtual reality. So when I say versus, here you will see the versus in terms of the features. But what I am now talking about is implementation ability for somebody to choose between both the technologies, especially in learning space. So where budgets can be a constraint, you can go with AR. And in case you don't even want to go with any of this, stick to Microsoft PowerPoint animations, stick to animated videos and other things which are low cost, but still give people a real life experience. But if you're choosing these technologies for your learning, you have to have a very strong business case to be able to justify the cost that comes with it and the necessity. What is the population that is going to access it? And how, in the long run, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, how will you bring the return on investment? So that's the con. It is very attractive, it is very elusive, but when it comes down to money, people are going to ask questions. So you would require a very specific and very detailed business case to be able to take a decision whether you want to use these technologies. Just like I kept saying from module number 1, all technologies, because it's good looking and shiny and attractive, doesn't mean that you have to go for them. You have to decide for your organizational priority, what do your learners require? Maybe they require this, but not today. They will require it after 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. Because you are beginning the digital transformation journey. You do not begin with all the tools at one go. You evolve your journey. You do your phase-wise implementation. Let us say, as a learning expert, your opinion is that I think people will really benefit from it. We are a car making company or we are an advanced pharma company. This will be very helpful. But people are not sold on the idea because they still do not know what you are delivering. So how do you convince people? By doing a phase-wise approach, do a pilot, like we talked about, your learning experience, do your pilot, make sure that people totally enjoy the pilot. You're taking care of the short-term organizational benefits. Ride on the feedback of the pilot and slowly map out the larger phase as to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, where you can bring in all this fancy stuff. For example, what I'm doing for my academy, and I can use only my example here, is our academy is going to have simulations for people to be able to see various devices and click on them and move them around with their hands in virtual reality, etc. But we cannot do that right now because right now all our training materials are in PowerPoints and PDF documents. So we are taking the first step in converting some of them into videos and IPDF, interactive PDF, interactive PPT. And we are trying to convert our existing learning material into those, which gives a superior learning experience, cuts down the number of hours. So it's kind of a, rather, instead of augmented or virtual reality, we are doing more of gamification for our content. And once people like it, it's popular, and I know it will be, it's just that people haven't seen it. And then I can go and say that, okay, for phase 3, this is the budgeting we require. This is what the time it will require. This is what the resources will require. So I just always try to give some practical experience, which allows you to understand why we need it. It has to have relevance. That is your connection to your reality as a learning expert. Your decision-making capability will be influenced by the short-term win, long-term win, business case, budgeting, funding, and also maybe some people don't want to do it at all. Maybe the organization's vision is totally different. Like traditional organizations are like, we don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need this Jamela. We will simply outsource everything. We'll hire a learning company, they will do it. That's also a solution. In that case, then you become a one-man army and one man, one woman army, and you coordinate with some external agency for all of this designing, etc. to happen. And the learning benefit only comes to your employees. So there are various models in which you operate. My whole submission is that be careful about when you jump in, do not try to jump in with everything which is so-called quote unquote fancy. Make sure that you have the relevance of what works for my organization, my employees. We are now going to go into something called chatbot, which is used to be an enigma, but nowadays it is no longer an enigma. Every website is a chatbot. All apps have a chatbot. You can have your own app, which can have a chatbot. So what are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about how chatbots are written, etc.? No, but we will get a sneak peek into what a chatbot is and how it becomes what it is on websites, in the sense of what goes into designing a chatbot. Okay. Again, don't try to mug it up. Have a good understanding here. Most of the material is in the book, so you don't need to struggle to write notes. Okay. So I'm going to pause at various sections because I'm trying to do my level of gamification level 1 to try and not overwhelm you with all the information at one go. So here on the screen, you see what is the definition of a chatbot. A chatbot is a computer program that simulates and processes human conversation, written or spoken, allowing human beings to interact with digital devices as if they were communicating with a real person. How an AI chatbot works. Okay. So like we said in the first slide, and that's why in the first slide, the graphic becomes very important. All of these are various kinds of representations of how AI is implemented in real life. So if you look at the lowest level, there's natural language processing that allows the robot or the chatbot to understand what is this human trying to say. English, sentence, turn, tense, active voice, passive voice, punctuation, all of that goes for a machine to learn English. And then there is predictive analysis that allows the outcomes to be understandable, legible for a human being to understand. For example, the output will be for a chatbot, a series of machine learning zeros and ones. But will a human understand it, recognize it? No. So there are other items like predictive analytics that come into play to understand how exactly a human will respond to a certain question. So you make it legible and understandable through predictive analysis. I had used that sentence there. I'm repeating it here for continuity. If this, then that. If that, then that. And this is how the flow is. That's why I gave you that example of the flow chart. And then there is sentiment analysis. Good morning. How are you doing today? I apologize for your inconvenience. Robots do not feel emotion. Sentiment analysis is trying to gauge the sentiment of the human which is talking to the machine and try to emulate some level of empathy, sympathy, emotion. Okay? All of this you are able to see as an outcome because during machine learning, all of that has been embedded into the robot, and deep learning allows the not only the emotion bit of it, but the data to come together in a structured manner so that it doesn't become garbage in, garbage out. In case you give garbage inputs to a chat, what does the chat say? Sorry, I didn't understand you. Try asking your question again. That can even happen in case of a relevant question that you asked. That means the machine learning has not evolved as much, and the deep learning is not able to process what you're saying because there is a limited vocabulary, limited understanding, and the robot has not evolved as much. Remember, robots are evolving all the time. With day-to-day experiences, their capability to deal with human beings gets better and better because the machine learning gets more and more evolved. The deep learning processing capabilities increases all the time. And all the information that the robots get through various kinds of interactions with humans, they store it in various kinds of servers. We'll talk about it when we talk about our how the information is stored, etc. And that primarily comes into the standards, the chapter on standards. We'll spend some time at that time as to how all kinds of learning experience is stored at a central pool so that all kinds of robots can access it. And so when one learns, everybody else also gets to learn that. So we'll talk more about it when we'll do the standards chapter. So now, having said that, how an AI chatbot works, we also want to now make the connections to our continuous learning. So how do we use an AI chatbot? We can use it along with continuous learning through integration through LMS. So if you have any questions, excuse me, you can ask a robot to help you. It can support the learning processes, can act as a virtual guide or a tutor for you. The product tutor can evaluate final outcomes, assessments. Process tutors can give you hints and feedback as you go through your learning course. The benefits for learners is it is highly engaging. It's a two-way conversation. Learning and application becomes fun. Hesitation to ask questions is eliminated. Some people are shy. There are always friends that you would have who've been in school, never asked a question. They would sit at the back bench, they will sulk. But once the class is over, they will come and ask you, did you understand that? Can you help me? I've had many friends like this. They are shy. So for those people who are shy and do not want to speak up, chatbots can be a blessing because you can interact in as much vulnerability as you would like with the chatbot. Benefits for the organization, analytics, dashboards, insights, and quicker realization of return on investment. Because this does not require people to be employed, trainers to be expensive, trainers to be brought in, classrooms to be organized, all the jing bang that goes with classrooms, air conditioning, electricity, food, hard copy, stationery, all of that can be eliminated if you're able to get in interesting LMS systems and augment it with the chatbot. Remember, a chatbot alone cannot provide a learning experience. It's an augmentation to the learning experience. And here we are only talking about that augmentation. And then conversational learning. There is a segment in our learning material where we have created this man. His name is Luca. We put the name as Luca because there are a lot of French and German people in our company. So you can, there's a button at the bottom of Luca, which is actually a chatbot. It asks, ask a question to Luca. So now, there are some times when people will ask questions. There are some people who will just for curiosity click the interrogative button and do nothing. So the Luca is programmed in two ways. If you ask a question, Luca will respond to the best of its capability. And if you do not ask a question, you simply press the button without asking a question, it will start giving you frequently asked questions as trying to begin a conversation with you. So chatbots have also evolved. They understand human emotions better. And I would say that banks, booking tickets, etc., many kind of online portals where you are tracking shopping, etc. Chatbots have taken away a lot of the mundane, boring jobs of people having to deal with refund queries, this query, that query. It's so quick, it's so fast, it's so accurate that the experience, user experience has increased. And it is a big challenge for human beings to now match up to that speed of executing results. Because at the end, earlier, the whole work used to be done by human beings. Now, I think the last creme de la creme, 20% of cases that cannot be solved by the chatbot itself goes to a human being for a response. Yeah. Personally, I love Amazon's chatbot. It is so quick, it is so accurate, and there's been recently, I think I've hardly spoken to a human being. I go to the chatbot, I say what item I'm trying to track, what is wrong with it. It has a what should I say, programmed response. If I'm saying this refund hasn't happened, it will go, it will check. And only if it cannot find something, then I have to talk to an agent. So I would say, frankly say that in the last 2 years, I think I've spoken to an Amazon chat agent just twice. Just twice. Even HSBC, my bank, which is here, I get most my answers through chatbot. I don't have to call the customer service. Even though I'm a premium customer and they say, oh, call us anytime, I haven't had to because the chatbot is so efficient. Okay. Before I get into gamification, any comments, feedback, thoughts? Everybody understood this? Is it okay? Is the pace all right?
Ma'am, I am not very clear with this outcome of predictive analytics. I mean, natural language, you said it's about understanding the language which human beings had input. Sentiment is understanding their emotions. Can you throw some more light on predictive analytics?
So predictive analysis is the robot comes and tells you this is the result. Now, you are saying, I don't quite get it. It is not sentiment. This is human language, prediction. Prediction to be able to see what else can the human ask for. So sometimes you would see when you're writing to a chatbot, even before you say anything, it gives you ding, 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 4 or 5 things, right? For example, the first thing that you select, let us say the chatbot says, okay, you want to know how to apply for a credit card. Okay, you click, okay, yes, show me. It will not just tell you, go here, go here, go here. It will tell you those steps, and then it will say, it will predict, okay, The next question Tina is going to ask me, well, I get the steps, but where do I find this link? So it will immediately predict without me even asking that you can find this link here. And if you cannot find this link, you can also find it here. And if you cannot find it, this is my customer service number. And if the customer service number, because the next question I can ask that what timings are the customer service number? Okay. What is my nearest branch? So it predicts the question that I can ask based on millions of data points of customers who have asked those questions in the past and give you all the information even before you ask them. That's predictive.
Understood, ma'am. Thank you.
Any questions, rest of you? Okay. Let's go into gamification. Now, gamification is, I won't say my favorite topic, but yes, it is definitely one of the topics where I think we really challenge ourselves in terms of trying to make sure that we are still sane, congruent, and sticking to learning objectives. One of the, and I will maybe reserve my comment at the end. I will talk about few disasters that I think happen in gamification. But before that, let's understand the process and try and attach it to our learning experience. So again, just like in the chatbot, we are going to talk about what is gamification. Gamification in continuous learning is the process of applying games and gaming designs and concepts to learn, train people, learning and training sessions in order to make them more engaging and entertaining. So basically, gamification is applying gaming designs for learning, for training, and for interacting with the users. For example, let's take today's model. There are 4 people whom I can see. The rest of the people have no clue what's going on. Okay. So for a learning expert, it can be very frustrating to understand, is the learning getting delivered the way you would? Now, unfortunately, in our situation, the way I can check whether the learning got delivered is very analog. Year-end exam, assignment, etc., etc. So it can, let us say that here, instead of this educational initiative, this was actually somebody who will be creating a product at the end of this training. How does a learning expert give somebody a license to operate? That's what we call, right? License to operate for somebody who will go and work in a lab whom they can't even see. They cannot, right? So there has to be more engaging, interacting, practical, relevant methods of learning for people to say, okay, yes, I am confident that this person will be able to perform in the job, will be able to deliver the results that is expected. So let us bring in some techniques of gamification. Now, gamifications, people misunderstand in many ways. So that's the second thing I'm going to talk about at the end. What is gamification? You think it is, but it is not. And what are some disasters of gamification? Okay. Before that, we'll have to do a little more deep dive into gamification. What are the 9 elements of gamification? There's a master narrative. There are challenges, like you have those game challenges. Then you have levels. Okay, there are levels of a game. There's instant feedback that, oh, no, you have to go back and do this all over again before you move forward. There's scores that you can get to see. There are various kind of badges that you learn along the way. Then there's various kind of collaboration tasks that you can do with other team members who are with you in the game. And then there are various kind of leaderboards that you can look at so that you know the scores. Now I'm going to talk about levels of gamification. Gamification can be partial gamification. Some of it I'm doing right now. I'm bringing the content one by one, taking you through a journey. It's an entry-level usage of gamification that can be applied as quiz, assessment in a traditional e-learning course. Gamified activity in traditional e-learning courses can be click on this to play a game. That can also be partial gamification. Then you move to level 2, which is game-based learning. In game-based learning, the entire learning part is converted into a game. We were talking about avatars, where you're walking through certain things, you're moving through the entire lab or the building or the manufacturing facility or going through the entire process of how a claim is processed, an insurance claim is processed, or whichever industry you are in. You're going through the entire process as a game instead of going through millions and millions pages of PDFs and PPTs. In this case, the entire learning path is converted into a game. It features scores, badges, leaderboards, everything else. Level 3 is a gamified learning path. It is different from game-based learning. Game-based learning means you have a game and you learn on it, you come out of the game, you're done. Gamified learning path is a more complicated application of game-based learning. It reflects a learning path that has challenges aggregating to achieving proficiency at different levels. It also features scores, badges, and leaderboards, but in gamified learning paths, you cannot move to a next level of learning till the time you achieve a certain level of proficiency. How does it check it? It checks it like, let me give you a simple example. So all of you, most of you play video games. I've never played it, so I very vaguely relate to it. I'm going to try and give you a different example. Let us say you have a game-based learning. At the end of the learning, you say, okay, there's this door you have reached. And there it says, okay, test your knowledge. And your knowledge is 7 out of 10. I will not let you go to the next learning path. I will tell you, your knowledge is not adequate. Refresh or play this game all over again because you've got to be 8 to 9 out of 10 to be able to move to the next level. That means the trainer is enforcing that the knowledge, the retention, the understanding has to be 80 to 85%, or rather 90%, or maybe in some situations 100% for you to move to the next level of the game. Don't get confused with the level I'm talking about. These are gamification levels, and the levels I'm talking about is proficiency levels of learning. I hope everybody understands competency and proficiency and capability. Do you guys understand these terms? Yes, no, maybe, guys? I can explain it. I can explain it.
You
If
can
you want me
explain it,
to.
and I think we kind of know it, but not really in depth of the differences
So
between.
everybody uses it interchangeably. So what is a capability? What is a capability? A capability is an amalgamation of experiences of a competency that you acquire over a period of time. Question, what is a competency? A competency is a culmination of skills, behavior, and knowledge. Now, let's understand this. We will take the simplest example of somebody being able to operate a car. Let's take that example. You go to college and you learn, or driving school, and you learn in a classroom session how to drive a car. That's knowledge. Skill is when you sit into the simulator and you move around the levers and you know where the accelerator is, the brake is, the clutch is. So now you have the skill to operate the machine. Okay? Behaviors is what you know how to respond to when you are using your skills and your knowledge. Behaviors is panic. What time you should be getting out of the car. What situations can be disastrous. Your behaviors are based on, at this point in time, only skill and knowledge. Remember, none of it has actually been practically practiced. Okay? Now you learned all of this. Now you take your car into the road and you sit with a learner and you learn. You do some dummy sessions, you do something, and eventually you are told, okay, you are okay to drive. You can drive. You pass the driving test, you can drive. You have the competency now. Your capabilities, proficiency level is 0. What is 0? No experience. 1, some experience. 2, can drive properly. 3, advanced driver. 4, racing driver. These are your proficiency levels. So when you take your when you take your competency into the real world and you start applying it on your job, you start achieving proficiency level. And that is when it becomes a capability. So when I will talk to you, does X person have the capability to do this? Most people say, she knows it, but not there yet. What they mean is the proficiency is not there yet. They have the knowledge, they have the skill, they have the behavior, the right kind of attitude, but their experience is not rich enough for them to say that they have the capability to do it. They have the competency, but they don't have the capability. Unfortunately, all these words are used interchangeably. They are not the same. They are not the same. They're all different. And what I've given you is a sneak peek into various kinds of learnings that happens when you do instructional design, organizational design. These are explained even more in detail as to what is the subtle differences between each. Honestly, it's very confusing, but then this is how I've understood it. So I try to tell it to people so that it's very easy for them to understand. Now coming back here. If we look here, we are talking about the levels, excuse me, the levels of gamification in itself. But when we're talking about a learning path, the learning expert is making sure that your proficiency, your experience that you get in practicing that skill is at least 85 to 90% so that I'm giving you further knowledge. If that doesn't happen, you have to do it all over again. Doesn't happen, you have to do it all over again. Doesn't happen, you have to do it all over again. And fourth time, you get kicked out. You can't do it. You go back, you kick down. You kick down to another level that you're not able to clear it. It means that you would have to go down, begin all over again. Or maybe you can't do it today, you're exhausted, so you can log in tomorrow. All of that you can bake in. And now you don't need an instructor to manage all of that. The game is managing that for you. The game is managing that for you. How is it an advantage for a trainer? It means that the students or the trainers, sorry, the employees, whoever is learning from you, the receivers of the learning will come to you after a certain level of knowledge. They are baked. They are not mud. They are baked a little bit for the trainer to play with. They are not coming out raw. So there are places where gamified learning paths are super helpful. Level 4, which is the ultimate, gaming portals. This is next generation gaming approach that integrates concepts of learning paths, micro learning, social learning, personalization, discussion boards, all kinds of things where almost the trainer is absent. You go through a game, you reach a level, you find your team, you have to then do some activities, collaboration activities with the team, finish a challenge, you finish the challenge, then you have a next challenge, then you have to do a real project, which can be done in virtual reality, you finish the project, somebody evaluates you, all of this is happening as a game. There is an instructor involved who's just taking tabs of how many people at what round, etc., but they're not doing anything physically much. They're just observing. They're depending on the machine to bring them out. It happens in many of the online booking tools nowadays. I know it happens in Make My Trip. They have completely converted their learning into gaming portals. It's happened in Deloitte. There are multiple places where people are switching to this, especially consultancy organizations where they need quick results and every minute is billable. They have the money. They have the money, but they want to churn people at a faster rate. Yeah. All right, questions. I'm going to stop and ask for questions before I talk about the disasters of gaming, gamification, and how learners have to be mindful about where you apply gamification and how it can go totally wrong. Any questions before I jump into that?
Ma'am, the leaderboards, sorry, what it means?
Leaderboards are pretty much dashboards, where it tracks your progress. So it tracks the date on which you started your learning path, how many minutes you took in this stage, how many rereads you did, how are you doing as compared to other people. So it's competitiveness. So there are 5 people who are taking this learning path. You are the third in them. You are at the bottom 30%. I did not need that statistic, but yeah, it will give it to you. It will give it to you. It's like that bloody thing everybody uses nowadays. What is the thing that you guys keep looking at? Steps. Okay. How many steps have you walked today? How many have you walked in this week? How many did you walk in this week, in the last year? How is it better than it's making me feel bad. But then yeah, it gives you all that stats. Like by mistake, I opened this one. This says you have walked 39% less this year. Okay. Doing way more amount of work. But then that's like an example of a dashboard or a leaderboard. They keep constantly pushing you. It keeps pushing you in the button, wants you to go into competition. not only with yourself, but the world. It's not a healthy world to live in. Again, interesting point of view. I mean, life can be simple. I mean, what I do. I don't care how much I walk. I mean, as long as the job is getting done. But yeah. So those are leaderboards. They can be irritating, but then yeah, from the learning point of view, it can be helpful. Okay. So before I go into,
Ma'am,
sorry,
ma'am,
yes,
for this gamification, it can be individual as well as group activities, right?
yes,
Or
yes.
do you have any examples that
Of
can of both things, like individual and group activity using
yeah,
gamification?
yeah. So individual, the best example is onboarding. You get an employee, you onboard the employee. The onboarding journey is individual. The person goes into it. They explore various departments of the company. They go through a game that this is the team. These are the people. This is what this team does. This is what this team does. This is what this team does. This is the ethics and compliance team. Da, 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 da. You finish your onboarding journey. It is always individual. Always. Now, group activities are project management. Let us say the project management department of the organization, where we want to work with teams. We need to learn how to work with teams. That is where you will have multiple people going through this game together, managing a dummy project or managing a dummy budget, P&L, trying to learn finances, or manage the organizational budget. As to these are the 5 pillars, you have to allocate money, you have to finish it by so and so time. These are your team members, go. And then you play a simulated game to learn it.
Okay.
And at the end, you know, okay, these are the concepts we learn. And there will be challenges in between. So let us say in year 3, we used to do a business acumen simulation. It's called Capstone. Try it out. It's amazing. It's so good. It's used in very, very, what should I say? Fortune 500 companies in the US, Silicon Valley. Obviously, our Indian brothers have developed it. But then you go there, it makes you a CEO of a company. You have a team of people whom you have to work with, and you have to break even at year 5. They give you a business scenario. You begin with that business scenario, you begin with fake money. And there's this team which has various kinds of people who are going to help you through the process. And so year 5 years is done in 3 days. Okay. And so year 1 finishes on the first day in the evening. Year 2 begins in the beginning of the next day. Year 2 begins in the middle of the next day. And they basically do 5 years in 3 days. So in between, your team members will resign and go. They will just come and say, okay, this person left. So your team goes. Your team goes. This team member suddenly goes. For example, I'm one of the team member and I've been assigned this task. I'm in the task. Suddenly in the between the screen, it will say, you can no longer complete this, and you are unwell, you are on sick leave. So I'm gone. Okay. Then if you are the CEO, they will be like, there has been a fire in this country. Your supplies will no longer reach you. Your timelines have completely moved. And the interesting bit is there are no set simulation. These are randomly generated in the system. So the instructors who run the game for our team members, they also don't know what challenge you will get. You can get a COVID attack. You can get a military attack. You can get famine, drought, all kinds of things. So these are classic cases and very expensive, by the way. NASA uses them, Accenture, very expensive companies use them. But it's like a real life experience. I've seen people literally get into real kind of challenges, fights with each other. Because every day, year finishes, there used to be a debriefing. So the facilitators will take you into a room and then they will debrief. Okay, what did you do wrong? How did you allocate money? How did you plan? How did you budget? Because then everything is falling off the rails depending on that. You have to be profitable at the end of year 6. Year 5, you have to break even. So it's a fabulous game. Try it out. And I'm going to give you some examples. There are links at the end of this document, additional reading. Look at them. They're really, really nice and compelling games. In fact, there is one in which you get to learn. You can cook while you are on the YouTube video. You can add ingredients and you can literally cook with the chef and see how the outcome is. And those are games, again, that is an example of an individual game. The one that I gave is an example of a group game. Make sense?
Yes, but means how the time management is done in the group activities, like because everyone's way of thinking and then responding into the game is different, and
Yeah. So you will face the impact. If you have a slow team member in real life, you face an impact, right? Because the person is not doing the job on time. So there, the
Yes.
person will not be able to finish it in time. That your timeline will go away. So if in case a game, you are given 8 minutes to do the job. You have a slow team member, he'll not be able to do it. The time will
Oh,
stop. You will not be able to do it. Just like an exam. Do you remember those IITG exams? The ticker goes, and that's what after that you can't do it. That's what the
right.
game complains. So if you have a weak
Okay.
team and the team players you've been assigned or you're playing with are bad, then that is where the competition begins and the fight begins. क्या कर रहा है यार? Hey, team member नहीं कर पाया तो ये. That's where the fight real life begins. It actually becomes real and it gets ugly, I'm telling you. But yeah, so like I said, this is one of the disasters. People get unnecessarily competitive. We do not. So when you go, now this is now I will, and thank you for giving me that, because that was the one thing I wanted to talk about. Remember, when you teach people through gamification, you are only seeing the time and the speed and the not necessarily all competencies and capabilities of people are showcased, because you're giving them a very loaded environment in which they have to prove themselves. So while it can be beneficial, the flip side is not everybody is fast, but then there are people who are extremely wise and extremely good at what they do. They might be slow. So going back to our generational learning, somebody is like me, 42 years, 43 years, we haven't played these games in our lives. We will do miserably in these games. Does it mean that we are bad? No, definitely not. We know what we are doing. It's just that there's a heavy bias in gamification about you understanding technology and being comfortable with it. So replace, do not replace your education or your capability to educate people or impart knowledge only based on games or gamified learning path. There has to be a human intervention involved to make sure that you recognize people's potential the way it is. And this is my part of the philosophical lecture, which I love giving, but it keeps us learning experts sane and human. Otherwise, very soon the machine can do a job. Can they do a job? They can't. There has to be a deeper understanding of talent, knowledge, potential to be able to tell somebody this person is no good. The machine will do it very easily because it is limited intelligence. Human beings don't. They see the worth of human beings in a different way. All right. Any more questions?
Ma'am, master narrative, what is
Sorry.
that?
Sorry.
Sorry. See, the 9 elements that are there on the screen, master narrative is one of them. What is that
Yes.
exactly?
Master narrative is how you're designing the game. Your narrative, the story that you're building. So let us say you want somebody to learn how to use a wrench. Do you know what a wrench is, right? The one that helps you lift cars or material. Or a simpler example, a tin cutter. Let us say you are designing a game for people to know how to open a tin. Okay. So the master narrative will be, how will you open? So first you will introduce, it's like a movie script. You will introduce people to the tool. What are we going to learn today? Okay. We are going to learn how to use a tin cutter to open any kinds of tins. We will be using 3 kinds of tins during the example. All right. So the first step is, what are the various parts of a tin opener? There are 3 parts. There's a head, there's a body, there's a this. And then what time do you put in the assessment? What time do you put in the questionnaire? That whole layout. जैसे movie बनाओगे तो सारे elements बनाने होते हैं ना. That is the master narrative of the game.
Okay. Understood. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Okay. Now everything coming together. E-learning is the symphony. E-learning is the getting together all the brilliance together. So now it basically, and that's why I've used that word, which is again little philosophical, but then very relevant. Everything we have discussed beautifully comes together under one umbrella, making e-learning the all-encompassing medium of continuous learning. So now the whole confusion about what e-learning is, and the module where we do the history of e-learning, which we'll do the next one, there is a history module as well, where we'll talk about how we have evolved to come here. There are various places you will think, "Arey, ye wahi to hai, e-learning hi to hai." But then there are subtleties about what e-learning is and what it isn't, and we'll cover it in that module. But right now, we are going to talk about the various things that come together in e-learning. So let's talk about knowledge database. Knowledge databases is a form of e-learning, which is nothing but basic form of e-learning with moderate interactivity or maybe no interactivity. There's indexed explanation of guidance, software questions, step-by-step instructions. You find them like in Wikipedia. There's like 1 million things of information. Or there is this website you go to, which has some course, and there's information. There's not much interactivity. It is basically a data dump and information which has been gathered across the internet, and it brings it to you. Just a knowledge database. Then there's synchronous learning, and then there's asynchronous learning, and then there's online support. So let's look at synchronized learning. Synchronous learning or training is done in real time with a virtual live trainer. We are doing it right now. We are doing a real-time virtual training with a live trainer. I'm a live human being. Everyone can communicate directly with the trainer and also with each other. Now, what are the popular tools for synchronous e-learning? Virtual classrooms, online chats, video conferencing, live sessions or webinars like we are doing right now, live whiteboards. Live whiteboards are the ones, and I don't know whether you guys have ever used it. There's a tool in Teams which is called whiteboard, where if you start writing, everybody can see it. It's like a normal blackboard, but it's just called whiteboard because it's digital. And nowadays, I think classrooms also have whiteboards. How many of you have children in schools? Have they replaced the blackboards with whiteboards? Do any of you know?
I think most of them are using whiteboards now with the markers instead
See?
of blackboards.
Oh my God, the fun of chalk is gone. You can't
Yes,
hit people with chalk anymore. Come
right.
on. That used to be the favorite pastime, picking up chalk pieces when the teachers would drop it on the floor and then throwing it at each other, grounding it into a powder and leaving it on people's seats so that their pants and skirts would get dirty. Oh my God, the fun is gone. The fun is gone. That's boring. Okay, I guessed it, and that's why I asked that question. I don't have kids, so I don't know that. So yeah, so that fun is gone. It's whiteboard. Boring, boring, boring. Okay. Online, the janitor would be happy कि झाड़ू कब लगाना पड़ रहा है, धूल मिट्टी कब होती है. But otherwise, yeah, not fun.
There may be some other fun activities with the new devices.
We don't know about them. Yeah,
Yeah,
they must have figured something out because that
because
is so.
because kids find a way to enjoy things.
I know. They must found a way, which we don't know yet. So for us, that used to be the biggest fun, and especially that box of colored chalk. Do you remember those colored chalks that used to be? They used to be rare. Most of the classrooms would have white ones. Sometimes the
Right.
biology teacher would get the colored ones. The chemistry teacher would get the colored ones because they want to make a distinction. Because when they draw things on the board, and that's when we were like, okay, I got a pink chalk. And there will be some team member, the class colleagues who would eat chalk. You always have one friend who eats chalk. And people would say, okay, calcium की कमी है यार, नहीं मेरे को मजा आता है. They would always have one chalk in their pocket. Yeah. I have terrible school memories. I digress. I have all kinds of weird. I studied in Shama Prasad Vidyalaya, which is right opposite Sardar Patel. And Sardar Patel folks and we folks shared a boundary wall, and they would throw things at us. We would throw things at them. Chalks would be the most lightest and easiest as missiles to throw at their balconies. I mean, yeah. So those were ammunition for us, like gun ammunitions. Okay. Sorry, I digress. But yeah, live whiteboards, online collaboration tools where people say, I'm working on this project, guys. Assignment के question समझ नहीं आ रहा, चलो अलग में बात करें. चलो सारे मिलके एक साथ लिखें. So that's and collaboration tool. Okay. And there's audio conferencing also. It doesn't necessarily have to be video conferencing. People can get through an audio conferencing. Unfortunately, it is not always easy to get a group of people to commit to attending a training session at the same time. For example, today we have very few participants. We have just 9 people. I'm sure we have way more people in the course than this, but then it can be difficult. And this is where asynchronous training can help. What is asynchronous training? So pardon me, I'm not going to go to online support. I will touch it at the end. I just want to compare synchronous with asynchronous. Asynchronous, typically traditional in nature, involves self-paced learning, network-based learning, intranet-based learning, internet-based learning. It's not like somebody giving a lecture and attending. It's basically IGNU. It is basically IGNU on steroids. मतलब जैसे online जैसे मैंने course करा है like nursing only. They tell you ये material है अपने आप पढ़ो. एक आध class होंगे teachers के साथ. So the facilitators will come and do some sessions. Rest of it read yourself at your own pace. Someday you read 3 hours. Someday you read 15 minutes. So it is more what should I say, the onus of learning, the ownership of learning is more on the learner as compared to the instructor. Because we are expecting these are all corporate individuals, they are grown-up people, they do not necessarily need hand-holding, they can read their material themselves. And then there is a doubt clearing session, or there are live sessions where you can go and ask your facilitator questions at certain hours of the day. So the long distance that Narsi Monji does part-time, in which all of the learning you have to do yourself. Then you have to go to the campus to attend certain classes, do certain projects, etc. But the learning, onus of learning lies on you. Okay? Okay, it has online bulletin boards, online discussion groups, emails, all can be totally self-contained. So the example that I gave you is totally self-contained. Things that you learn at Udemy, totally self-contained. Things that you learn on Simplify, that's a tool. Those are all your onus, your responsibility. Finish the modules, listen to the lectures, don't listen to the lectures, completely up to you. Popular tools for asynchronous e-learning, self-paced modules, discussion groups, message boards, pre-recorded video and all. Unfortunately, some people may have difficulty using technology as they might find it isolating. I find it isolating. I find it bloody boring when they don't have instant feedback from an instructor. Lucky enough, blended learning can fix these inconveniences. Now, before I go into blended learning, we are now going to talk about online support. What does online support mainly mean? Online support, just like knowledge databases, is nothing. It doesn't have a background, but the online support is forums, chat rooms, bulletin boards like Quora. You have a problem, you just put it in there. You know this is the group community. Everybody is going to go and contribute saying that, हाँ, ये question इस वाले chapter में है. Or even I was struggling with this has not reached us. For example, you want to have a discussion about, oh, last class recording, we haven't got it yet. Who has it? Oh, I don't have it. Do you want to write an email? Maybe you write an email. We'll wait for your response. All of these things are a little more interactive than knowledge databases, but it works well in conjunction with either synchronous or asynchronous. It can also be a lifesaver for the facilitator, because now everybody is not running to the facilitator with all questions. There are people who are also solving it among themselves. Like you create a WhatsApp group and you ask various kind of questions among yourselves, and 80% of the doubts are cleared. 20% is what goes to the facilitator. So now we are saying that the best way to bring all the world's learning beauty together is blended learning. Now, blended learning is what we have been doing since COVID. Blended learning is both combination of synchronous as well as asynchronous tools to create training programs that work for everyone, which means that the training can have an instructor-led session. It can also have recorded sessions. It can have modules which you have to study yourself. It can also have modules which multiple people together can study. It can have assignments like you guys have. They can be online, they can be offline. So it's basically best little from all the forums gotten together into a true blended learning program. Most of the foreign universities nowadays give you a blended learning experience. There are white papers that you have to do. There are modules that will not be done in the classroom. You're supposed to do all by yourself. There are modules that will only done in the classroom. You cannot do it online. There are modules that will be done partially, online as well as offline. So all of this learning has now been organized. In fact, I am saying foreign universities, etc., because that is where I go for learning now. But the reality is even children are learning like this. Like I said, I don't have children, so I don't know, but most of the children are also learning like this nowadays. The school classroom has changed. It is no longer what it used to be. Yeah? We talked about one aspect today, but then on a very serious note, learning has changed. Maybe for better. But then there are also various kind of experiments that the education boards are doing, especially in India, learning has largely changed than what it used to be. And every day, the attention is towards how can we make people understand better. Knowledge is simplified. It is just not about mugging up information and producing outputs. It's about truly understanding the knowledge and applying it on jobs. So that has changed. Okay. All right, what else do we have? Now we are going to go a little faster because it's quite easy. All of you know what it is, and we've been in the learning space for a long time. So how do people interact with each other? There are 4 levels of learning interaction. This is not there in the book, so just relax and listen. There are 4 kinds of learning interactions that you can experience when you're teaching as a learning expert, excuse me. There's passive, there's limited, there's moderate, there's simulated. Passive, no interaction, no interactivity. Graphics, images, animations, rollovers. So there's no interaction. There's some animation, etc., but then you're pretty much sitting and reading stuff. Then there is limited interaction, like multimedia, IPPT. I said interactive PowerPoint, a clickable graphics. You click, something opens up, things like those, navigation menus, glossaries, assessments which are interactive. Then there is moderate interaction, where there's complex interactivity and customization based on, for example, you go into a training and the first question they ask is, well, tell us your level or let us check your knowledge. Based on what knowledge you begin, the slides will begin from that place. You will not be taken through certain modules because you've established that I already know all of this. So it can be animated videos as well. There can be some kind of audio recordings. There can be simulations, like I spoke about, the business acumen simulation. And there can also be scenario-based learnings. Now, in our company, we do this. At the end of a module, we don't just ask yes, no questions or multiple choice questions. We give people a scenario, and then we ask, what do you think we should do? The right and wrong answers. So it's scenario-based learning. It truly tests the knowledge of the person. And then simulation. Simulation is the one that I spoke about, where you completely go into a game or completely go into a simulation. You spend your days in it to be able to go through it, and you have a very good idea of the concepts, how they work, because it is emulating a real life scenario. So it's real-time learning, it's use of gaming technology, 3D animations, and it includes all the elements of, when I say 1, 2, 3 means the gamification level 1, 2, 3. Those are the various levels of interaction. Just to for you to understand that if somebody is having a conversation with you and they will, oh, that learning has very limited interactivity. You're like, what does that mean? So levels of interactions is passive, limited, moderate, and simulated. So remember, guys, this course is about educating you about what are the various concepts and terms used in digital transformation today. So that when somebody is having a conversation with you, you're reading something, you're interacting something, and you're trying to learn something, these words should not be limiting for you. Okay? I promised some additional reading. So there is Happiness at Workplace. This amazing. This is my favorite. I'm a happiness coach. It's my favorite article. Look at it, read it. It's really, really helpful as to how digital learning can contribute to happiness at workplace, how it makes things easier, more accessible. Interactivities in e-learning. It talks about 4 levels of interaction. I've already shown the levels, but there are more examples there. Then there is a white paper on virtual reality and artificial intelligence for soft skills. I will send it to you as a PDF as well. Then there is chatbots assisting in teaching language. That's on that link. And then there are challenges of e-learning and proposed workarounds. At the end of your text chapter, I put it all in the glossary because I thought it would too much to put into real learning material. It is again awareness. So if you see in your book, there's this whole segment where I talk about challenges of e-learning and what are some workarounds that you can use. All right. I think we are not bad on time. Have I completely busted the time? No, I think we are just on time. 1 minute left, right?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. I will see you next week on 3rd December then. Any questions? It's just a 1 minute though. Any questions, anybody?
No questions, ma'am.
Okay. So you guys have a lovely rest of the Sunday. There's not much left for you guys. It's just begun for me. So I have a Sunday. You guys don't. So nevertheless, have fun. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Take care.
You're welcome.